Okay, this is a presentation on diddling, historical double tonguing. Okay, there is lots of support for this, most particularly in Quantz's book that everybody ought to have on their bedside table on playing the flute. So this was the go-to double tonguing technique of the 18th century and before. It is, however, mostly dead with all modern winds. Everybody tuckas and nobody diddles. I've played with a lot of professional flautists, and nobody's even heard of it unless they are historical flute players. So nobody diddles, no flutes, no brass, no reeds. Everybody tuckas. And I don't get it. I mean, I think diddle's really wonderful stuff, but it's certainly dead now. And so obviously the question that comes to mind is this really necessary? And I have to be honest, no, it's not. And the reason I assert that it's not entirely necessary is I have heard modern flute players doing amazing things with just tucka. And they do seem to have all the control that I want in a double tongue, but they do it all with tucka. I find tucka too harsh, and to be honest, I never got really good at it, even as a French horn player, which was my go-to instrument for most of my youth. My tucka was always too harsh and too much separation, and maybe I just never learned it well, and well, I think that's obvious given what flute players can do with this stuff. But what I can do with the diddle is much more subtle and much more control. That was a diddle, obviously. You can't do Baroque and even most complicated Renaissance without some double tongue technique. There's just so fast you can go with a single tongue. I mean, I used to have a reasonably fast single tongue, but given that I now have diddle, I'm probably not as fast as I used to, but sort of a normal single tongue speed is which is just not fast enough for doing good Renaissance fantasias, and certainly not for anything in the Baroque. So you're going to have to learn some kind of double tongue. Now, whether that's diddle or tucka, you're going to have to step into something. I like diddle a lot. I mean, I really love it. I can do almost anything with the diddle, from inégale on slow movements to very, very fast passages. I mean, one of the nice things about diddle is that you've got a very different stroke between the duh and the dul that give you an automatic inégale-ish aspect to it without trying. So you get which you get a little bit of an evenness even without trying. And you can get great articulation control from what I call a pseudo slur, with almost no separation at all between the notes, to staccato. So you can go all the way from a pseudo slur to a staccato and everything in between. I mean, I find myself changing the amount of separation between notes, really at every interval. And so like if I'm doing a group of four, I'll have a slightly bigger separation after the first one and smaller separations between 2, 3, and 4. So you've just got the ability to do anything you want. And of course, really the attraction to diddle is ridiculous speed, which is just nuts. I don't think I'm as fast or as clean as I used to be, but I don't know that I need it. I think anything over about 130 in a Baroque presto is, getting to be just show-offy and not musical. There's also, mentioned in Quantz the Deary, which is a great stroke for doing inégale. It brushes across the ridge of the mouth. I'm not covering that today. I eventually abandoned Deary because I feel like I can get any sound I want out of a diddle. So, but I'm not advocating, just saying what my personal experience is. How hard is this thing to learn? It's really hard. It's going to take many, many hours. Don't count on it being anything other than horrifically painful and tedious and catastrophically annoying. My main ability to learn it was happened when I was commuting from Penn State to see my girlfriend in New York City and spending 4 hours of time on I-80. I'd take off the head joint, put a little back pressure on the back of the instrument and go. And eventually, it took a long time in 4-hour blocks. So don't count on being anything other than frustrated for your first week. And then at some point, like, many of us, professional career got in the way, and I took about a decade off playing and didn't get back until my kid wanted me to give him lessons. So I took about 10 years off somewhere in the middle of my life, and it took me about a year to get my diddle back. And where I am now with it, I feel like I got maybe not quite the same speed as I had when I was a kid, but I certainly have much more control. And the more time you log with diddle, the more you will have control over each aspect of what you're trying to accomplish in terms of articulation. So just keep in mind, as a recorder player, our main toy is articulation. So you want to be able to have really, it's not just ta versus da versus la, it's the infinite variation from very harsh articulation with big separation between notes to very subtle articulation with no separation between notes and everything in between. That's your main color palette for how you paint your music. So I think it's worth it to spend the time to make this work. I do want to comment on what seems to be a conventional wisdom that depending upon your language of origin, diddle is harder or easier. I'm going to disagree. I do not think it matters what is your natural, what is your language of origin that you speak naturally. I speak English. I'm pretty good in Spanish. I've been doing that for the last year. I lived in Germany, so I know German. I've taken French, Russian, and I think diddle is just a wholly artificial tongue stroke that does not exist particularly similarly in any language I've ever heard of. So I don't think it matters what your natural language is. Diddle is going to be annoying to learn. I do want to point out that it's a trap, that playing faster is not playing better. So diddle is a drug. Okay, you can show off in one movement per concert. Do try to get over it. To be honest, it took me years. So when I first learned this, I got a real kick out of playing at speeds that mortals can't achieve, and I thought that was cool. I eventually figured out that it's not cool at all. It's just really fast. And particularly now that we have computers and AI and the ability to take audio files and change their speed, it's just fast. There's nothing musical about fast. It's just fast. And what I find distressing is that, and I'm not going to name names, but there are some number of relatively famous recorder players that got trapped by this. And the idea of playing more rapidly than mortals can, so that you can show off that you can play more rapidly than mortals, is not music. It's just fast. So I'd like you to recognize that if it isn't musical, it's just wrong. That said, the audiences will love it, but that doesn't mean that they should. So once you've got this learned, pick a piece, and what I would suggest is the Schlagpavane, the Susato, uber famous piece that everybody plays, because it's got a required diddle on it that is the chitty chitty bang bang rhythm, right? So, and that's a great piece to start your diddle so that you can actually use it somewhere and it'll work, and you don't have to worry about coordinating fingers with it or whatever. Personally, my first piece that I ever played diddle on was Il Pastor Fido. That is the, Vivaldi that's not really a Vivaldi. And it's funny, I haven't played this in 30 years, but my fingers haven't forgot. It's, and I will never forget that. And I took it all the way up to ridiculous speed, and the realization I had for the keyboard part had the keyboard also playing 16th, and he cursed my name. But now I don't have any illusions that that's how fast it ought to go. There is a place where, if you actually get to ridiculous speed, I know where you can use it. You can get the Bassano, Richard Carey, and they have these long rhapsodic passages, like, and you can just go to town. And you can vary the tempo up and down because it's a fantasia, and you're just going crazy with it. And you can show off to your heart's content and be very musical, which is a lovely bonus. So let's get to the details of how to pull this off. So first, what you want is to do a D stroke.